Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again to take that huge pile of research you probably meant to read and really boil it down to what you need to know right now without the overwhelm.
And today, oh boy, we are tackling something I think hits close to home for a lot of people, maybe especially the kind of people who tune into this.
Mm.
It's that paradox, being really ambitious, having big dreams, but just not doing anything, being paralyzed.
Yeah, you know exactly who we mean because let's be honest, it might be you. You've got these huge, amazing goals. Maybe it's writing that novel you always talk about.
Or launching that side business, finally.
Right, or getting into peak physical shape, huge things. But then when it's actually time to, sit down and start, poof, nothing happens. You're completely stalled.
Instead of drafting the business plan, suddenly you're deep into Twitter again. Or instead of going for that run, you're organizing your bookshelves alphabetically.
Yeah. Or deciding, oh, just one more episode, then I'll start. It's this cycle, isn't it? And it feels awful. It's so frustrating.
Deeply frustrating. And worse, we look at ourselves doing this and we start telling ourselves stories. We label ourselves.
Like I must just be lazy. That's the big one.
Or I just don't have the discipline. I lack willpower. I'm just not cut out for big things.
And that self-talk, that labeling, it's really damaging. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It really does. But here's the good news. What we found digging into the sources of this deep dive, it offers a much more, actionable diagnosis, and a kinder one, frankly.
I like the sound of that.
This inertia, this feeling stuck, it's not actually a moral failure. It's not some permanent defect in your character.
So it's not laziness forever.
No, not at all. It's much more likely a habit. And it's a habit driven by how our brain perceives the task ahead, specifically the size and the perceived difficulty.
So it's about brain wiring. Psychology, not like personal weakness.
Exactly. It's psychology. Our brains are ancient machines, wired for survival. And sometimes that wiring clashes with modern ambitions.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then.
That's it. We're pulling together insights from these sources to build out a really clear, practical three-step framework. The whole idea is to kind of outsmart that default brain wiring.
To trick ourselves into action.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
To transform that awful feeling of laziness from being part of your identity, who you are, into just a habit, something you do, and therefore something you can change.
Moving from being stuck in analysis to actually building momentum. I love it. Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack the psychology behind this procrastination, this drive for comfort. All right, so let's start right at the beginning. Why does this happen? Why do smart, ambitious people get so completely stuck? The sources seem really aligned on this.
They really are. The core reason, the main psychological barrier, boils down to this. The goal, or maybe just the next step, feels too big, too overwhelming, maybe even impossible to start.
That feels like a key distinction. It's not that we don't value the goal. Like rationally, I know writing a book would be amazing for my career.
Right. You know the why. Your rational brain, let's call it System 2, like some researchers do, it totally gets the long-term benefits. It makes the logical plan.
Right, then something else kicks in.
Exactly. System 1 kicks in. That's the faster, more emotional, intuitive, survival-oriented part of your brain. And it processes the task differently.
How so?
It does a super quick gut-level calculation based on perceived effort and potential pain. So when your rational System 2 says, okay, let's say $50,000 this year, your System 1 immediately flags that as potentially huge effort, cutting back on everything, maybe running for an hour every single day. It just screams, pain, difficulty, high cost.
And System 1 is wired to avoid pain, right?
Yes.
That's its job, survival.
That's its primary job. Avoid threats, seek comfort, conserve energy. So when it perceives this big, scary, high-effort task, it hits the brakes hard.
And steers you towards
Immediate comfort, or at least the path of least resistance. That might be scrolling social media, tiny, easy dopamine hits. Novelty, no effort.
watching TV, Eating something comforting.
Anything that provides an immediate, guaranteed little reward or removes the perceived threat of the big task. The avoidance of that immediate pain nearly always wins out over the promise of a distant, abstract reward.
Wow. So the ambitious person who's stuck, a problem isn't really a lack of ambition at all.
Not usually, no.
It's more like an internal tug of war. The rational brain wants the goal, but the emotional survival brain just vetoes it because the upfront cost feels too high.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. That's the ambition inertia paradox.
Mm.
And the result of that conflict, avoidance. We avoid starting.
And doing that avoidance thing over and over, that becomes the habit.
That becomes the habit. And that's what we mistakenly label as laziness. The sources really push this reframe. Laziness isn't who you are. It's not a permanent state. It's simply a learned pattern, a habit of defaulting to comfort when you're faced with something that feels overwhelming.
Okay, that reframe feels empowering because if it's just a habit.
Habits can be changed. They can be unlearned and rewired. But the first step is recognizing where that stuck feeling really comes from.
It's not lack of desire. It's the feeling of overwhelm at the sheer scale of the thing.
Precisely. Think about writing that 200-page book again. You don't actually fail when you sit down and can't write page 1. You often fail much earlier, the moment your brain thinks about all 200 pages. That's when the alarm bells go off. That's the peak resistance point.
So the sources are saying to beat this, we have to somehow make the task feel so small, so trivial, that the emotional brain doesn't even bother putting up a fight.
Exactly. We need to shrink the perceived cost right down. Make it so small it slips under the radar of that internal gatekeeper.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So if the problem is size, the solution must be smallness. Let's get into the tactics. How do we actually do that? All right, this is where it gets practical. Step 1 in this framework. How do we beat that feeling of overwhelm?
It starts with making the task incredibly, almost ridiculously small. So small that it feels non-threatening.
This tackles that system 1 avoidance thing head on, right?
Directly. Big goals feel intimidating. They can literally trigger a mild stress response, activating parts of the brain like the amygdala, the threat detector.
But small steps, they don't register as a threat.
Exactly. They feel easy, low commitment, low risk. And crucially, they allow you to achieve something the sources call small wins.
Ah, the small win. And that's not just about feeling good, is it? There's something more going on.
There's actual brain chemistry involved. When you complete a small step, even a tiny one, your brain releases a little bit of dopamine.
The motivation molecule.
The very same. Dopamine is tied to reward, pleasure, and crucially, motivation. So that tiny action leads to a tiny success, which gives you a tiny dopamine hit.
And that hit directly counteracts the feeling of dread or failure that the big goal might have triggered.
Precisely. You're essentially injecting a little bit of positive reinforcement right at the start of the process, where the resistance is usually highest.
So you're creating a positive feedback loop. Small action says dopamine brain says, ooh, I like that, let's do it again.
You got it. You're training your brain, associating this activity not with pain and overwhelming effort, but with a little bit of reward.
Shifting the focus away from the massive distant goal, like the finish book.
And onto the immediate, tiny, guaranteed success, writing that one sentence.
Let's really hammer these examples because they drive it home. The sources are clear. If the goal is that 200-page book, today's task isn't write chapter 1. It's literally write one sentence.
Just one. Not a paragraph, not even 2 sentences. One.
Or the guitar example. You want to learn guitar. The goal today isn't learn Stairway to Heaven.
Definitely not. The goal is practice one chord. Just one. Strum it a few times. Done.
It feels almost insultingly small.
It should feel insultingly small. That's the point.
Right.
It needs to be so easy that you cannot possibly say no. It bypasses the resistance.
Okay, but I can hear someone listening right now thinking, seriously, one sentence, one chord. That's pathetic. How is that ever going to get me anywhere?
Ah, but it's looking at it the wrong way. It's not about the magnitude of that single action. It's about consistency. And this brings us to the mountain analogy the sources use.
Okay, lay it on us.
Think about climbing a huge mountain like Everest. The goal is the summit, obviously. But nobody, absolutely nobody, starts their climb by leaping to the summit.
Right. You die.
You die. Or, more likely, you'd look up at that impossible peak from base camp and just freeze, give up before you even start. Because the distance, the sheer scale, is paralyzing.
So what do successful climbers do?
They focus on the next step. Literally, the ground right in front of them. Their goal isn't the summit right now. It's just getting to that next marker, taking that next single step.
Looking down at your feet, not up at the peak.
Precisely. The goal of writing one sentence isn't really about the sentence itself initially. It's about achieving the act of starting. It's about taking that first step.
And once you've taken that step, you get the small win, the dopamine.
Yes. And that success, however tiny, builds a little bit of momentum. It makes the next step slightly easier. Maybe tomorrow, writing one sentence feels so easy you accidentally write two or three.
Ah, so it's not about the sentence. It's about building the habit of showing up and starting.
That's the core. You're replacing the habit of avoidance with a habit of action. Even if the action is minuscule, you're training your brain that starting is easy, safe, and even a little rewarding.
So the big takeaway here is ditching the all or nothing perfectionist mindset. Forget writing the perfect chapter today.
Forget perfect. Focus entirely on progress. Tiny, consistent progress. Those small efforts, done day after day, compound over time. That's the real engine of big results.
It's like compound interest for effort.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you wait for that magical day when you have 8 free hours and feel perfectly inspired to write,
You might be waiting forever.
you might wait months. But if you commit to just one sentence every single day, no matter what, within a week, you've shown up 7 times. You've written 7 sentences, maybe more. You've built a foundation. You've kept the momentum alive.
Consistency trumps intensity.
Every single time, over the long run. Showing up, even for a tiny action, keeps the habit muscle strong. Okay, so step 1 tackles the size of the task, making it feel less threatening. But even a tiny task can get skipped if we're relying on something notoriously flaky.
Let me guess. Willpower.
You got it. Willpower. We all know how it goes. You wake up, maybe feeling motivated, full tank of resolve.
Yeah, today's the day.
Exactly. But then life happens. You make decisions all day what to eat, which email to answer, should you take this call, and each decision chips away at that willpower reserve.
It's like a muscle that gets tired.
Very much so. Psychologists call it decision fatigue. Every choice, big or small, taps into the same limited pool of mental energy. So relying on pure grit, sheer mental force to make yourself do the important task, especially later in the day.
It's a recipe for failure. Because your willpower tank is probably empty by then.
It's essentially poor planning. You're scheduling the hard thing for the moment you're least equipped to handle it.
Okay, so step 2 is about bypassing willpower altogether.
Pretty much. The goal is to set up systems, routines, that make the desired action as automatic as possible. We want to take the decision-making out of the equation.
So you decide once when you set up the routine instead of having to decide every single time whether or not to do the thing.
Exactly. You want to remove the friction, eliminate the should I or shouldn't I debate that drains your energy before you even start. The sources talk about creating a frictionless environment for the habit you want to build.
This sounds like that training wheels idea mentioned in the materials.
It's very similar. The routine acts like training wheels for the habit. It provides structure and support, making it easier to perform the action, especially in the beginning while the habit is still fragile. Eventually, you don't need the explicit routine as much because the action itself has become more automatic.
Give me an example. Let's say my goal is to review my finances for 20 minutes each morning. How does a routine help?
Okay, so without a routine, you wake up, you have coffee, and then you think, okay, finances.
Hmm.
Then you have to remember where the spreadsheet is, boot up the computer, find the file, maybe clear some space on your desk.
Lots of little steps, lots of points where I could just say, ugh, too much trouble.
Exactly. Each step is a potential off-ramp, an opportunity for System 1 to whisper, skip it, go check your phone instead.
So the routine.
The routine pre-decides and pre-prepares. Maybe the night before, you set out your laptop on the kitchen table, already open to the finance spreadsheet, your coffee maker is set. When you come downstairs, the environment prompts the action. It's just there, ready to go.
You've removed the barriers to starting.
You remove the decisions. The path of least resistance now leads towards the desired action, not away from it.
Okay, let's talk about that classic example. Putting your running shoes by the bed. I've heard it a million times, but does it really work? I mean, I could just step over the shoes, right? They could become just another thing I feel guilty about ignoring.
That is a really important point, and it connects back directly to step 1. The routine shoes by the bed is only effective if the task it leads to is perceived as small.
Ah, okay.
If the shoes are by the bed, but the implied task is run 10 miles immediately, then yeah, the pain signal is still way too high. You'll likely step over the shoes.
So the routine needs to trigger a tiny action.
Yes, the routine is wake up, see shoes, goal, put on shoes. That's it. Success, you put on the shoes. That's the win for the routine.
And then maybe, because the shoes are on, the next tiny step, like walking out the door, feels easier.
Maybe. Or maybe the goal for day 1 is just putting on the shoes. Routine serves as a trigger. It links the desired tiny action, shoes on, to an existing automatic behavior, waking up. This is what some sources call habit stacking.
Habit stacking, like attaching the new habit you want to one you already do without thinking.
Precisely. If you already make coffee every morning, your new tiny habit gets tacked onto that. After I press start on the coffee maker, I will write my 1 sentence. The existing habit, making coffee, becomes the reliable trigger for the new tiny habit, writing.
It sounds like it creates essential structure. It defines the start of your day or whenever you place the routine.
It does. And that structure builds momentum. Even if you just achieve 3 tiny things prompted by routines, drink water, put on shoes, write 1 sentence, you've already had 3 small wins before 7 a.m.
That feels way better than hitting snooze 3 times and feeling behind already.
Totally different feeling. It changes the trajectory of your day. You move away from relying on fickle motivation.
And towards just following the routine, meeting the expectation you set for yourself.
Exactly. You automate the start. You conserve that precious willpower for the genuinely hard, complex thinking you need to do later.
Okay, we've shrunk the goal with step 1. We've automated the pathway to starting with step 2 routines. But there's still that moment, that absolute hardest part, actually starting. Moving from thinking about it to doing it.
Ah, yes, the moment of initiation. That's where inertia digs its heels in the deepest. Even with a tiny task and a smooth routine, sometimes there's still this final, invisible wall.
So how do we break through that wall?
This is where step 3 comes in, and it's beautifully simple. The 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule. Okay, the sources were super specific about this. The commitment is just work on the thing for 2 minutes. That's it.
Exactly 2 minutes. It's an agreement you make with yourself, and it's so small, so finite, that it feels almost impossible not to honor it.
What's the psychology behind why 2 minutes is so effective?
It taps into how our brain to calculate the energy cost of starting versus continuing. Getting started, overcoming that initial inertia, takes a surprisingly large amount of activation energy.
More energy than just keeping going once you've started.
Often, yes. The 2-minute rule makes the activation energy required seem negligible. 2 minutes. Your brain basically goes, okay, fine, that's nothing. I can do that. It doesn't bother putting up the usual resistance.
It's like the commitment is so small it doesn't trigger the effort response. But is the real trick here something else? Is it about giving ourselves permission to stop after 2 minutes, like a psychological escape hatch?
That's a fantastic insight. Yes, I think that's a huge part of it. By committing only to 2 minutes, you're telling your anxious, effort-avoiding System 1 brain, look, if this feels truly awful after 120 seconds, you have my full permission to stop. No guilt.
And removing the pressure of potentially hours of work makes it easier to just begin.
It removes that feeling of overwhelming, indefinite commitment. And the funny thing is, once you do start, momentum often takes over. The sources use that analogy of pushing a ball down a hill.
Right. The first push is the hardest part, getting it moving.
The 2-minute rule is that first push. It overcomes the inertia. Once the ball is rolling, even slowly, it tends to keep rolling. Gravity, or in this case, momentum, helps out.
So if my task is read that dense technical report, the 2-minute rule says just read for 2 minutes. One page, maybe?
Exactly. You sit down, you read for 2 minutes. By the time the timer goes off, maybe you're halfway down the second page. You're already engaged, your brain is warmed up. Stopping now might actually feel like more effort than just continuing to the end of the paragraph or section.
Let's apply it. Cleaning the whole messy kitchen feels impossible. 2 minutes means.
Maybe just load the dishwasher.
Hmm.
Or clear 1 square foot of counter space. Or put away just 5 things that are out of place.
Making those daunting sales calls.
2 minutes might just be opening your contact list and dialing the very first number. You don't even have to commit to finishing the call, just initiating it.
So it's laser focus on the start, getting your body into motion.
Precisely. It's about triggering the action sequence. And what the research and anecdotes show is that people using this rule very often find themselves continuing for 5, 10, 15 minutes, sometimes much longer. Because once the engine is running, it's easier to keep it running.
Okay, there's one more crucial piece to step 3, according to the sources. The reward system.
Yes, this is vital for locking in the habit. After you complete your 2 minutes or whatever 20 step you committed to with step 1 and triggered with step 2, you must give yourself an immediate small reward.
And small is key here. We're not talking about buying yourself a new car.
Definitely not. It needs to be immediate and enjoyable, but simple. Maybe it's listening to your absolute favorite song. Maybe it's stepping outside for 60 seconds of fresh air. Maybe it's just consciously acknowledging, hey, I did it. Good job.
Why tie the reward specifically to the start, to the 2 minutes, rather than waiting until the whole task is done?
Because we are trying to rewire the brain's association with that hardest part, the initiation. We want the brain to link the act of overcoming inertia with pleasure.
Ah, not linking pleasure only to the distant finish line.
Exactly. If the reward only comes hours or days later when the project is finished, it's too far removed to reinforce the crucial behavior of starting. By rewarding the 2-minute start, you make starting itself feel good. You lower the barrier for next time. You're teaching your brain, hey, pushing that ball, that actually leads to something nice right away.
Okay, let's pull this all together. This framework, it's really elegant in its simplicity, but you can see how it directly addresses the psychological roadblocks we talked about.
It really does. So for everyone listening, the synthesized takeaway is this 3-part tactical approach to beat paralysis. 1, make the task tiny. So small, your brain doesn't fight it.
2, create routines. Automate the lead up to the task to conserve that precious willpower.
And 3, use the 2-minute rule to guarantee you start, and then immediately reward yourself for starting to make the act of beginning feel good.
Simple steps, but the sources also stress that just knowing the steps isn't enough. There's a mindset piece here too, right? About consistency and dealing with, well, life.
Oh, absolutely. This system isn't magic. It requires a shift in perspective. One key point from the materials is challenging the myth of the effortlessly successful person.
You mean the idea that people we admire just wake up bursting with motivation and never struggle?
Exactly that myth. It's incredibly destructive because it makes us feel uniquely flawed when we struggle. The sources remind us, Everyone struggles. Even the most accomplished people face inertia, have bad days, feel unmotivated.
So the difference isn't that they don't struggle.
The difference is they don't let the struggle stop them permanently. They have systems, maybe like this one, maybe others, that help them keep going even when they don't feel like it. They understand that one missed day doesn't mean failure.
Which brings us to handling setbacks. Because you will miss a day. Life happens. You'll fall off the wagon with your tiny habit.
Inevitably. And when that happens, the absolute worst thing you could do is spiral into self-blame. See, I knew I couldn't do it. I'm just lazy.
That negative self-talk again.
Right. Instead, the sources advocate for self-compassion and curiosity. Could you miss a day? Why? Was the step still too big? Was the routine disrupted? Did you forget the reward?
Treating it like data, not disaster.
Exactly. Failure isn't the opposite of success in this model. It's just a data point on the path to success. It tells you something needs adjusting. So you acknowledge it, maybe tweak the system slightly, and then crucially,
You just start again tomorrow. Or even right now, with the 2-minute rule.
just reset and go again. The goal isn't an unbroken chain of perfection. It's consistency over the long haul, showing up more often than not.
I really liked the fire analogy the sources used to capture this cumulative effect.
Oh yeah, the fair analogy is great. Our big ambitious dreams, the finished book, the successful business, the marathon medal, they feel like this huge roaring bonfire we want right now.
But you can't start a bonfire with giant logs.
You can't. You'll just smother the stark. You have to start small, with tiny flammable bits, tinder, kindling.
And each tiny action we take using this framework, that's like adding one piece of kindling.
Precisely. Writing that one sentence, practicing that one chord, putting on the shoes for 2 minutes. Each action is like adding a tiny twig or a dry leaf to a minuscule spark.
And individually, each piece seems insignificant. You barely see a difference.
For a while, yes, it feels slow, it feels trivial, but if you keep doing it, consistently adding that small fuel, that spark catches. It grows stronger, it generates more heat.
And eventually, with enough consistent, small additions.
Eventually, you have a self-sustaining, roaring fire. That's the power of compounding small efforts. It perfectly illustrates the core message. Forget massive, sporadic bursts of effort. Aim for small, doable actions done regularly. That's consistency. And consistency, not perfection, is what builds the bonfire.
And this framework makes that consistency achievable. Because we're not fighting our brains anymore.
We're working with our brain's wiring, gently nudging it, tricking it sometimes, into cooperation instead of conflict. At tag, OTRO.
Wow. Okay. This deep dive has really laid out a clear, actionable roadmap for anyone feeling stuck despite their ambitions. I think the biggest thing I'm taking away is stop waiting. Stop waiting for motivation or the right time or the perfect plan.
Absolutely. The power of this framework lies in its immediacy. Act now, even if it's ridiculously small.
If we zoom out and connect this back to the big picture from the sources, it seems the real battle isn't about finding more discipline or willpower.
No, the core battle is against inertia. Simple physical and psychological resistance to starting. And you don't beat inertia with brute force willpower. You beat it with clever design.
Minimizing the perceived pain of starting, automating the process, making it easy.
You got it. So you have the blueprint now. Make it tiny. Make it routine. Make it start with just 2 minutes and reward the start.
Simple, but it requires doing.
And that leads to the final thought, building on that idea of consistency and action. We've laid out the how. The knowledge of these steps, or similar ones, is out there. But what really jumps out from the synthesis is the demand for immediate action.
Not tomorrow, not next week.
Right now. So the ultimate question for you listening isn't what amazing things you'll eventually do with your dreams. It's not about the grand vision months or years from now. It's about what ridiculously small 2-minute step are you going to take, like right now, as soon as this deep dive ends, to light that first tiny spark. Because the sources are crystal clear. Yeah. It's the action, however small, not the intention, that actually fuels the fire. What's your first piece of kindling going to be?